Hello, today we're going to look at the IELTS speaking test, and I would like to think about the timing and structure that's going to be necessary as a strategy for answering the questions during the test. It can be a very stressful test, and I think with good timing and structure, a lot of the stress will be relieved. Here are the timestamps. If you want to scrub through the video and see sections that you're more interested in, maybe you have some questions about some and you want to see examples. I will make future videos with examples. And yes, your grammar and vocabulary is going to be judged on the IELTS exam. But the other criteria that you need to work on, according to the public descriptor, is your fluency and coherence and your pronunciation. If your pronunciation is clear enough to be understood with little stress, your pronunciation is not really an issue. But your fluency and coherency is. And where we'll get our fluency is through our timing, and where we'll get our coherency is through how we structure our answer. So that's mostly what I want to talk about in this video. And so I highly recommend, as you practice answering a few sample questions, always have a timer handy to see if you're able to control your speech. Are you able to share a complete thought and conclude that thought after around 15-20 seconds? Because the examiner is not going to be prompting you or encouraging you during the test. They're trying to be very neutral and giving you the opportunity to speak and then, analyzing the speech you produce. If they like you or if they kind of think you're good at speaking, they're not going to give you extra points for what they see your potential is. They're judging only on how you perform. So a native speaker might struggle with IELTS speaking if they don't have an organized idea. So that's why I think having a structure is really important. And most importantly, having a simple structure so you can easily remember it and easily adapt it to different types of questions. Because while I, as the teacher, I know the timing, I know the types of questions, I know a structure that will be successful for you. The one thing that I do not know is I don't know exactly which questions you're going to be asked. And so you have to be able to prepare for anything, like you would in a normal conversation. And so that's why going into this, I want you thinking that the exam is not so much a test on your grammar and vocabulary. The test is based on your communication ability. And sure, grammar and vocabulary is very important for that, and it does amount for 50% of the score, according to the public descriptor. So as far as a simple structure that works, when we're talking about part one, and 15-20 seconds, we want to think about the who, what, where, when, why, how, which. If I ask you what your favorite sport is, what's your favorite sport? You say, oh, I like football and basketball and American football. Oh, and MMA, let's say that. Well, maybe that's true, and you did give a variety of vocabulary related to the question, and you showed that you do know the names of a few different sports. But if I think about your answer, you just said, what? I like this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing. But a more interesting answer that sounds more natural, if I ask you, what's your favorite sport, might sound like this. I like basketball. I really enjoy the NBA. I'm a huge fan of the Golden State Warriors. I think Steph Curry is going to be considered the GOAT in the future. So what did I show there? I showed that I could answer the question. I know some specific vocabulary related to it that's not really textbook English like NBA. I named my favorite team, and I named a player on that team, which shows that I have vocabulary and I'm knowledgeable about it. And when I mentioned the GOAT, greatest of all times, I'm using some maybe less common vocabulary. I'm using a word that's more like a slang word or a word found in popular culture. Next, the structure for part two. I'm going to put a little card on the screen to show you what the structure is. Now, mind you, this is my idea. And I'm just one guy who with one set of experience that I'm sharing with you. So if you have a different structure that you like for part two, or you want to alter what I'm showing here, by all means. The examiner is not going to be judging you on your structure, but the structure is going to be very helpful for you to develop coherency. And in my mind, what I want to share with you is I want to have an introduction, This is going to allow me to show my paraphrasing skill, which is a huge skill for IELTS, as well as show my hesitation skill. Then I want to talk about my past experience, my present feelings, and my future plans. I want to talk about my present feelings because here I am in the present moment telling you about this past experience. What was interesting or significant about that past experience that made me want to tell you now? And then future plans. So I had this past experience. I am telling you why it's meaningful, and how is this past experience going to influence my future plans? And then lastly, for the sake of coherency, I want to conclude and say, thank you, that's all I want to say. You can make a conclusion in 8 words. And the examiner will look at the time and see, did you speak for at least 90 seconds? But I believe that if you can follow my template, you can speak at length for at least 90 seconds. But again, you're going to want to use a timer as you do this. And what I do with my students is I have them practice those individual sections. And if they practice those individual sections and then they can combine them together, linking these different sections together will be much more manageable, much easier to train, much easier to find where your strengths and weaknesses are. And when you do sit in the speech, a lot of the anxiety can be relieved because okay, I finished this part, now move on. Okay, I did this part, now move on. So you're not going to get the feedback from the examiner because again, they're trying to be a neutral body listening to your output. You should be able to kind of self-assess and know where you are and feel confident. And so part 3. Remember, part 3 is a 4 to 5 minute section of the test, and you should have answers for around 45 seconds to a minute. What I like to do is I like to structure it like this. I have a rephrasing of the topic, I have my first point of view, and I have my second point of view. So this will be around 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and 20 seconds. So for a total of about 50 seconds. It might be a little short, it might be a little long, but there's going to be 4 to 5 questions to balance that out. Some answers will be longer than others. And what I like to think about is when we talk about a topic in general, some students are not exactly sure what that means. And the way I like to interpret it, and students have come back with feedback after they've taken the exams and said this was successful for them, is that different people have different ideas for different reasons. It's not my opinion I'm sharing, it's different people's opinions on different topics. So if the topic is about sports, and the question comes to you as, what type of sports are most popular in your country? I would say, well, it depends on different people at different times for different reasons, right? I might say, children think this is popular and adults think that is popular. I might say, people in the springtime. People don't really like football in the springtime. They like baseball in the springtime. Or maybe in the wintertime, they may be more interested in things like skiing or ice skating. But in the summertime, they're more interested in mountain biking. So different people have different ideas based on, different times of years. And here I would like to share you 2 examples of those. So I'm speaking in general. And then the language that I want to add to that is words like generally speaking, or for the most part, or a majority of people, blah, blah, blah. Or everyone's favorite idiomatic expression, by and large, which just is a funny way of saying in general. If you show knowledge of idiomatic expressions or less common words, you will be rewarded. On the public descriptor, labeled under band score 7, under lexical resource, they talk about using less common vocabulary words or idiomatic expressions. So by memorizing one idiomatic expression, it's not going to boost your score to a 7, but it doesn't hurt as you're working on your way up to higher and higher band scores. Okay, so that's it. We talked about speaking part 1, part 2, and part 3. And if you have any questions, please make sure you write them in the comments. And of course, if you're interested in the IELTS test, want to learn more, want to practice on writing, speaking, listening, and reading, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and see you in the next video.